JT Shaver here with New Layer, and today we'll talk about the latest discovery in my never-ending quest for the perfect budget lights. Content creators are always looking for something smaller, brighter, less expensive, the list goes on. In this video, we'll take a look at the new Aputure Amaran 60d and 60x to see how they balance all of those things and whether these lights are the new best budget option for small content creators. First off, these things are tiny and they take on a similar form factor to smaller cubic-shaped cinema cameras. The Nanlite Forza 60 was kind of the original ultra-compact 60-watt light, followed by the Godox ML60. Those two lights, along with the Amaran 60d and X, are all slightly different shapes but similar in size overall. The Forza 60 is still the smallest, and the Amaran lights are a bit shorter and stubbier, but the main difference here is that the Amaran lights have a native Bowens mount. The Forza 60 and ML60 require Bowens mount adapters to use those accessories, which is important because those are usually the cheapest and easiest to find. The Amaran lights come with a stock reflector, which is the weakest part of the kit, but also the least important part in my opinion. It's made of plastic, which isn't inherently bad, I guess. I've just never seen one that isn't metal, and I'm not sure how it'll hold up over time to scratches and dents and heat and things like that. These lights also include a dual NPF battery plate, which I'll cover more later, as well as an AC adapter and power cord and 90-degree mounting bracket. One of my favorite parts of these kits is the carrying cases they come with, and they use high-density foam, which you see a lot with gimbals. They're sturdy and very lightweight, but still offer a lot of protection, so I think they were the perfect choice for something like this, and they're a big bonus for budget lights in this price range. These lights are made of all plastic, which is what I expected for something in the budget range. They're not indestructible, but they're also not cheap or flimsy, and you're not going to break them unless you drop them on the ground. Now, there's a few details in the design of these lights that I wanted to mention because I think a lot of thought went into how they're actually going to be used. First, you may notice that these lights have no permanently attached mounting yoke. On the bottom of the lights is a standard 1/4-20 mounting thread, which you can use to attach to the included 90-degree bracket, a ball head, a friction arm, or any number of other mounting accessories. Since these lights are so small and lightweight, you can mount them basically anywhere, and by having a detached mounting yoke, they just store in a smaller package. The Amaran 60d and X have the fan oriented to push air in line with the light rather than out the top or the sides. With the air blowing directly over the COB, you get more efficient cooling. That also means the fans don't have to spin as fast or work as hard, which just makes them slightly quieter in general. You can actually see straight through this light from back to front, so there is a lot of room for airflow. So yes, these lights do use fans for cooling, but they're significantly quieter than the Amaran 100 and 200, which aren't really loud to begin with, so you're not going to have any issues with audio with these lights. Since the back of these lights is open for airflow, that means the screen has to go somewhere else. They put the screen on the side of these lights, which isn't something new, and I've seen it on some other lights like the Jinbei EF series. But there is plenty of surface area on the side of these lights, so the screen is relatively large for how small the lights are. It shows the current brightness and Bluetooth status, as well as the color temperature on the 60X, so they're really simple to use. The included 90-degree adapter has an umbrella holder, as well as a little felt-type washer where it attaches to the lights. It's a nice detail that protects the bottom of the lights and just makes them more secure so they don't unscrew during use. The bracket also doubles as a handle if you want to use these lights handheld as well. The last detail that I really like is the inclusion of a V-mount slot directly on the side of the lights. It doesn't have V-mount power leads built in, but you can mount the dual NPF battery plate directly to the light, or mount a V-mount battery and use a D-tap to barrel cable directly plugged into the light too. The power connector is a locking type, so you get the security on the power cable itself, as well as the V-mount or NPF battery plates locking into the light too. The controls on these lights could not be simpler. On the 60D, you can adjust the brightness in increments of 1% or press in on that button to adjust the brightness in steps of 20%. On the 60X, it's the same thing, and you press and hold the button to switch between controlling the brightness and the color temperature. When controlling the color temperature, if you press in on the button, it jumps between 5 different color temperature presets. Another huge selling point for these lights is their ability to use the unbeatable Aputure Sidus Link mobile app. Not only can you control one or more of these lights at the same time, but it also opens up a few other options like special effects. You can simulate things like flickering light bulbs, campfires, TV sets, and some gel modes are even available on the 60X. Other brands are catching up when it comes to mobile app control, but the Sidus Link app is still the most reliable and solid app out there. Before I get into the brightness and color accuracy measurements for these lights, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the included stock reflector. It's really the perfect example of why you should never listen to advertised specs when it comes to measuring lights with a modifier attached. Every stock reflector from every brand has a different beam angle, as well as a different fall off from the center to the edges of the light. Since they all concentrate the light differently, you really can't compare brightness measurements fairly using any kind of modifier. The stock reflector that comes with these lights has one of the most intense hot spots in the center that I've ever seen. I think it's partially because the modifier design itself, and also partially because the COB itself is really small in diameter. It concentrates the light from a 120-degree beam angle all the way down to a 15-degree beam angle, which is tighter than some other reflectors. Now, that doesn't mean that it's bad or useless at all, because most of the time you'll be shooting these lights through external diffusion or bouncing them off some other surface, or using some other kind of softbox altogether like the Light Dome Mini. It's just something I want you to be aware of if you think it's going to affect how you use these lights. With all that said, I created a light comparison tool that uses real-world measurements instead of manufacturer-provided specs, so you can compare lights from any brand more fairly. I'll have a link in the description if you want to compare the 60D and X with other lights more fairly, but I will share my most important findings here as well. A quick side note is that these lights use 65 watt COBs, not 60 watts, and they actually use 76 watts total when you account for the fans and electronics and screens. I measured both of these lights with my Sekonic C800 and got the following results. On the 60D, I got a brightness of 3670 lux, which would give you a proper exposure at 1/50th of a second, ISO 400, and f10. That makes it less than 1/3 stop brighter than the Nanlite Forza 60 or Godox ML60, so it's negligibly brighter than those lights. For the 60X, I got a brightness of 2130 lux with the light set to 3200 Kelvin, and 2580 lux at 5500 Kelvin. That's around f8 or f9, so the 60X is 1/3 to 2/3 stops dimmer than the 60D. I measured the 60D at 5586 Kelvin, so within 14 Kelvin of the advertised specs, which is as good as it gets. I measured the 60X at 2966 Kelvin when set to 3200, and 5740 Kelvin when set to 5500. So around 250 Kelvin off what the screen shows, which is within an acceptable range, especially for budget lights. The color temperature will change depending on what the brightness is set to, as well as what modifier you're using, so you really should be setting custom white balance every time anyways, no matter what lights you're using. The 60D has a color correction number of 0.3 green, meaning it has a very slight magenta tint, but for a daylight balanced light, 0.3 green is pretty much ideal. At 3200 Kelvin, the 60X has a color correction number of 0, so it has no green or magenta tint. At 5500 Kelvin, I got a color correction number of 1.1 green, and that's higher than I like to see, but it's not uncommon for bicolor lights, as they usually have more tint shift throughout the color range than a single color light like the 60D. So the 60D is slightly above average when it comes to tint. The 60X is a little better on the tungsten end and a little worse on the daylight end. The CRI and TLCI for both lights is great, and I got an SSI of 72 for both the 60D and X versus the daylight standard, and 86 for the 60X versus the tungsten standard, which is extremely good. The 60X has an extended color temperature range of 2700 to 6500 Kelvin. A lot of other lights start to lose color accuracy at the far ends of the range, but the 60X holds up extremely well all the way through the range, so it's really usable no matter what settings you have. It's also important to note that you'll get the same brightness out of these lights whether you're using AC adapter power or battery power, and with 2 large NPF batteries, you'll get around 45 minutes of runtime at 100% brightness. Overall, these lights provide similar brightness and color accuracy to other 60 watt lights, so that shouldn't really be the deciding factor here. The price, however, is. The Amaran 60d is only $169, while the Nanlite Forza 60 is $289 and the Godox ML60 is $269. The Amaran 60X is $199, while the Nanlite Forza 60B is $339 and the Godox ML60 Bi is $299. So at $100 difference per light, it's kind of hard to justify anything other than the Amaran lights for smaller content creators. If you already have other Nanlite or Godox gear, it's probably worth sticking with those so all of your lights are the same brand. If you're just starting to build your kit or only need 1 or 2 lights, the 60D and 60X are really hard to beat for the price, and they work seamlessly with all other Aputure lights. But what do you think? Do these look like the best budget option for you, or is there something about them that would make you pick something else? Leave a comment and let me know what you think. Links are in the description if you want to check these lights out further. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.